I want to give a share about a topic which is important, and we didn't have a chance to speak about it until now. And that is סימן קצ"א, which we learned in the past. And then we're going to bring out 1 point from סימן קצ"ב, and hopefully tomorrow there will be a share on the Hamshech. Then we could start. We can move on. If everybody's holding at קצ"ו, we'll go there. If not, we'll go at קצ"ד, whatever has to be done. קצ"ד and weiter. סימן קצ"א discusses the dinim of dam with רגלים and קינוח afterwards. And that is what we're going to talk about over here. There is quite some interesting Nekudas Lamaisa from the Alter Rebbe from the Tzemach Tzedek. Is it good? Yeah. Okay, fine. The Mechaber starts in קצ"א that Mechaber's shit is a woman who sees dam together with רגלים, whether she's sitting, whether she's standing, she's tahir, and even if she had some form of argosha when the blood came out, we say that the blood came from a makkah. The Ramah brings the Yashayimrim that says it's mutter only b'yeshevas, and only what is found in the water in the toilet, but not what's found on the edge, on the seat. Or if she's standing, it doesn't make a difference. She's still tamei. And he says, "V'hachinog," that's the minig. Then the Ramah adds another point. The Ramah goes through all the dinim. The Ramah adds another point. This only applies when she sees bakroi. It's a one-time thing that she saw, and then we say that it came we're mater or we're machmer. Yeah. But what happens is then he moves on. If she sees on a steady basis and she has pain, so the Ramah says she sees on a regular basis and she has pain, then yesh lahatir b'chol inyan, the Ramah says. Why? Because this is enough proof that there is over here a makkah which is moitzi dam. That is first part of the seif. It's only one seif in קצ"א. Moves the Ramah weiter. Now what happens if she finds blood after רגלים by doing a kinoach? She started, this is a continuation to what was discussed up until now. Why? That being that she finds blood only after רגלים, and she does not find any other blood, and also there is pain. It's an important point to remember. There's pain. She finds with kinoach, she only finds after רגלים. She does not find any other time. It's for sure dam makkah. So the next point of the Ramah continues the Ramah weiter. Some people say yesh machmirim, that this only applies by a woman who has a veses kavua, not by a woman who does not have a veses kavua. And by a woman that has a veses kavua, she does what's called the bdikas maharik, which is similar to the bdika which is done for Rouah machmas tashmish, that she does a bdika before רגלים. Then she puts a moich b'yisimokim, and then she goes to the bathroom. And then if the moich, she sees blood afterwards, and she 3 times she did it, and the moich came out clean, the bdika before was clean, so we know for sure that it did not come from the moker, it did not come from b'yisimokim, it definitely came from רגלים, and she is tahir. Why? If she would come from the moker, it would obviously touch the moich. That is, as the Alter Rebbe points out to you right away. And then, when she has a veses kavua, you have no reason to be chayshish anymore that it came from the moker. V'achinog, that's the minig. Then the next point that the Ramah brings, and all this is talking about when she feels pain, when she goes to the bathroom, she has רגלים. But if there is no pain, and then she finds blood by doing a bdika, and she does not find any blood in the רגלים, she's for sure tummy, not stam tummy, it's tummy midayraisa, the Alter Rebbe will point out. If there's no pain and she finds both in the רגלים and in her and in the bdike, some people say she's tahira because we're toilet in the רגלים. Some people say she is tummy because the רגלים brought about the blood. That is summary of the first two-thirds of the first seif. Then it goes into kartin when she sees little pieces. I'm not going to get into it now. This is a bunch of little points I want to discuss. I'm not going into many details, just the ma'isa, what comes out from it. There's a few Alter Rebbes, a few Tzemach Tzedeks. Each one has an interesting point, so you could look through them afterwards. The first Alter Rebbe that we're going to discuss is Sifkat and Gimel. Well, the first Alter Rebbe in the Siman just brings you the whole background, all the shittas that have to do with it. I'm not going to get into it now. The Sifkat and Gimel, the Alter Rebbe discusses where the Ramah says that if she has always pain and she has pain when she goes to רגלים and she always finds blood afterwards in a Kינוח, what is it talking about? It's talking about that she did not find any blood in the רגלים. She only found in the Kינוח. That's why the Shaila came about. Because if it would be a regular scenario where there's no רגלים involved, then we would say that she's tummy because she is, but over here, being that it's done, even though there's no blood whatsoever in the she doesn't see any blood in the רגלים, but she does a Kינוח right afterwards and she has pain. She always finds in the Kינוח afterwards, only in the Kינוח she finds blood, she is fine because she has pain. What happens if a woman, that's the Alter Rebbe sense of Kot and Gimel. What happens if a woman doesn't have pain and she doesn't see in the Kינוח, but she only sees in the toilet every time? There's no pain. No pain. Always sees a רגלים in the toilet, nothing in the Kינוח. So you don't have the akroi that the Ramah mentions. You don't have the ke'ev that the Ramah mentions. You don't have the issue of Kינוח. You have it in that she sees it in the toilet. So what's the din? So the Tzemach Tzedek in Shas Tshuva, Tzemach Tzedek Yeridei Siman Kuf Lamed Zayin Ois Yud, where the Tzemach Tzedek learns from the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe would make her Torah completely in such a scenario. Wouldn't be metama her. He's medayik from the Alter Rebbe, wouldn't be metayik. That's in Kuf Lamed Zayin Ois Yud. But what happens if she sees now also on the aid? She does a Kינוח and she also sees on it. That means she has no pain. She sees always in the toilet. And now she also sees on the Kינוח. So what's the din over here? When we're talking about that she sees in the Kינוח and in the רגלים and she has pain, we said before that it's fine, the Ramah says, but we're here talking about there's no pain. So what's the din? So that's different. Tzemach Tzedek in Yeridei Siman Kuf Mem Vav Sif Gimel. The similar idea is also in the Piskedinim on Siman Kuf Tzadik Aleph. There's only one Piskedinim from. This is actually from the Tzemach Tzedek, not from the Talmud of the Tzemach Tzedek. Like the rest of the Piskedinim, like the text, like the other sections in that from Kuf Tzadik and on. Kuf Tzadik Aleph is from the Tzemach Tzedek. Same idea is mentioned in Kuf Tzadik Aleph in Piskedinim and in Kuf Mem Vav Ois Gimel. I'll tell you the page numbers. Pass me my white book if you don't mind. Just so you have references. The first one I mentioned was Yeridei Siman Kuf Lamed Zayin Ois Yud, which is what I said, that if she sees, but she doesn't see, she only sees and always sees in the toilet, then the Alter Rebbe would be matir. That is in page 221 in your books. The next one that I'm mentioning now is Kuf Mem Vav Ois Gimel, which is in page 247. And a similar idea is also mentioned in Piskei Dinim on Siman Kuf Tzadik Aleph, which is the one I'm referring to is on page 528, which is basically a tshuva which somehow made it into the Piskei Dinim. So when you have such scenarios that a tshuva made it into the Piskei Dinim, it ended up being reprinted in the tshuvas when they did the newer editions towards the end of the tshuva. So that if you flip to page 307 in your book, you have two simonim, Shin Chav Ches and Shin Chav Tes, which are pretty much similar to, one of them is, quote, the Shin Chav Ches is a copy from what's printed in Piskei Dinim, and Shin Chav Tes is the same idea. So what does it say over there? We're talking about that she also sees on the aids. She doesn't only see in the toilet, she also sees in the aid, and there is no pain. And there is a Veses Kavua, that's the Nusach of the Shaila. Yeah? So he says over there that Be'etzim, he says, according to Reva Poiskim, she would be Torah. In Kuf Mem Vav. Al Kopanim, the bdika of the Rabbeinu Yerucham would work. The bdika that you do with the 3 times with the moich. And then he says maybe even without a Veses Kavua it will also be fine. That's what he mentions over there in Kuf Mem Vav. Now let's go to the next point from the Alter Rebbe. Another point that's important for the Siman also. I was told by some people that they don't like when I read long texts and translate them. So I'm just giving you the pointers. You could read a long text by yourself. Shiur are cut in half the time, but I guess everybody's up, so it's good. Sivkot and Daled in the Alter Rebbe. What happens if this is something which we discussed in a different shiur previously, unrelated to Kuf Tzadik Aleph, in a different Siman. If you remember, the Alter Rebbe discusses the Shitta of the Chacham Tzvi and also it's mentioned, it's also discussed in Tzemach Tzedek, if a woman has pain, does a pain somewhere else in the body cause that the blood will travel through the body and end up in the rechem, or does it trigger the rechem to release blood? So over here in Sivkot and Dalet, I'll just discuss it in short. He says if a woman always sees, it's really not negea to Siman Kuf Tzadik Aleph, it would be negea really to Kuf Pei Zayin, where it discusses these topics, but he mentions over here, if a woman always sees by blood after having pain, nothing to do with Mei Raglayim. So according to the Chacham Tzvi, it would be machmir. Why? Because we say the blood is what brought about, the pain is what brought about that the body should release dam nida, and therefore she's asur. Then the Alter Rebbe adds something very interesting in the parenthesis over there. The Alter Rebbe then says, if it's clear, it doesn't say what clear means, but when you look in the Tzemach Tzedek about what clear means, it usually means that you ask a doctor, and the doctor has nemanis if he knows what he's talking about. If it's clear that this makeh cannot cause blood to come from the makeh, it's a pain which does not cause dam nida to be released, and then she always sees blood when she has this pain, or right afterwards, then we say for sure it's a dam makeh, and we're not choishesh the chashash that we discussed in Sai b'negei Lo Yidam Achmas Sai b'negei Makeh, the chashash that maybe at the same exact time that this pain happened, she also had a period. We're not choishesh to that. Rather, if we say that every time she has pain, it's not pain together with Mei Raglayim, and we have a doctor, or we have confirmation that this pain does not generate dam nida, then she is toher. That's point from Sivkot and Daled. Now we'll go Sivkot and Hey. Another important point that I'm over here brings the idea of this 3 bdikas that the woman does to ascertain that it's not that it's not dam nida, that she does the bdika with a moich, and he says this only applies to a woman she's veses kavua. So the Rama says only by veses kavua. Tebe right away points out to you the same thing that we pointed out in Rea Machmas Tashmish, that it doesn't refer to veses kavua mamash. Rather, it refers to the concept of days when she for sure doesn't see any blood. So if she knows that she never sees, that was the Mechaber brings it over there. Over here, the Mechaber, the Rama doesn't mention it, but the idea, the Alter Rebbe points out, the same idea applies over here. It doesn't have to be a woman that has a veses kavua. It could be even a woman that does not have a veses kavua. Rather, she has a specific time frame when she never sees blood, which is the concept that the Tarak Halacha coined as Yomim Betuchim. Everybody knows the concept by now. Anybody went to Chassan classes? Yomim Betuchim applies over there. It's mainly discussed over there and applies over here also. That's basically a time when the woman does not see, when she knows, means from the after mikveh until the earliest date that she would see a period. During that time, during those days, you could be matir her, even if she doesn't have a veses kavua. That's Sifkot and Hay. But afterwards, the Alter Rebbe says, no, afterwards you can't be matir because maybe the veses did come. If it's after the Yomim these days, if it's past the earliest date when she could see a period, then maybe if she saw blood, even with if maybe she saw blood, we're going to say that it came from the period, came at the same time. So you wouldn't be able to know if it was caused as a result of Melaglaim, or it wasn't caused as a result of Melaglaim, or if it came with Melaglaim or not. You have no way of knowing. Therefore, these bedikas are done during the same time as that, during the time when she for sure does not see. When she for sure does not see, you could be matir sar, and you do the bedikas at the time when she could see it. Sifkot and Yud and Alter Rebbe on the same סימן. If she sees, what happens if she sees after Melaglaim? In the Kינוח, or she sees blood, and she does not see any blood in the Melaglaim, and there is no pain, the Ramah tells you Tmeya. The Alter Rebbe adds Tmeya over here is Midiraisa, and the Kulei Alma, nobody disagrees with it. Not only that, the Alter Rebbe says in such a thing, when she sees after Melaglaim without pain, and she doesn't see any blood in Melaglaim, the bedike that the Ramah mentions wouldn't work, because could be the blood will go around the meich. Maybe the meich will come out clean and the blood will come otherwise. The only thing which would work is bedika sheferes, which we know also from Rea Machmas Tashmish. Tzemach Tzedek in Siman Kuf Mem Hey Seif Vav, another one to put on your list to look at. Kuf Mem Hey Seif Vav, which is in page 244 in your book, discusses what happens if this woman does a bdika right after, does a Kינוח right after Melaglaim, Toich Shiur Veses of Melaglaim, a very short shear, and she finds blood. According to logic, she should be mutter. Why? Because we say the blood came as a result of the blood is the leftovers from the Melaglaim. However, the Ramah is machmer. Logically doesn't make sense. The Ramah is machmer. So the Ramah is machmer, you have to be machmer, you have no way around it. But still, in such a scenario, maybe the bdikas that the Ramah mentions should work. But he says no, the Alter Rebbe himself says machmer and the bdikas that they shouldn't work. Therefore only, he mentions the same thing as Alter Rebbe, only a bdika in such a scenario, even if she finds right away, only a bdika sheferes would be moyel to say that it's not, if you want to do a bdika sheferes would be the only way to do it. The same Tzemach Tzedek in the next in Ois Zayin, Tzemach Tzedek brings out a very important point, which we touched upon when we discussed it in Siman Kuf Tzaddik, and we discussed the Dinim of Ksamim. We'll touch upon it over here also, that in this case of Mei Raglayim, being that we know for sure that it came Migufa, even though we say that it's like the din of Roya b'Mei Raglayim is Medin Kesem, we don't look at the Shiur of Gris. Even if it's less than the Gris, if it's a situation in Mei Raglayim which we would make her Tamei, we cannot rely on the Shiur of a Gris. Why? Because Vadai Migufa Kachazia. It's clear that it came from a body. The only question is where from the body it came. So you can't say the Machoilus. You can't use the Shiur of Gris, it's only dependent on the Machoilus. And it doesn't make sense to say that being that you categorize Mei Raglayim as a Tumas Kesem, according to certain opinions, then there's no Gzeira on anything less than a Gris. This is what Tzemach Tzedek says over here. Happens to be pointed out in Kuf Tzedek and somewhere else in Tzemach Tzedek is mashma that we do follow the Shiur of Gris for Ksamim. It's not a stira from there to here. It only will be argument regarding Ksamim. When it comes to Mei Raglayim, it's clear that it's not. We can't go on that Shiur, even if we say that we go based on the Kesem. Seems from Tzemach Tzedek that it's not so clear that the din of Mei Raglayim will come straight from the issue of Kesem. However, from the Alter Rebbe, if you look in the end of the Madura Basra to Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, Madura Basra is where the Alter Rebbe discusses all the dinim of Argosha, and between it he discusses also the din of Mei Raglayim. He says clearly that Mei Raglayim is Medin Kesem, not Mitzad, not Medin Re'iyah. And just interesting, once we're discussing that Madura Basra, there's an interesting point in the same Madura Basra, the last few lines of the Madura Basra, that the Alter Rebbe then discusses the difference between Roya b'Karka Olam, which is a Kesem, that we say, even though we know for sure it's Megufa, we go based on the Kesem. By Mei Raglayim, the difference between the two, they're both essentially, the Alter Rebbe compares both one to another, Mei Raglayim and Karka Olam. He says by Karka Olam, because it's not Mekabel Tuma, you have no choice, the Chachamim made it into a Kesem. It's not a Riyah. But the Svare, to be Matir, you only have one suffix, and we're still Matir. What's the suffix is where the blood came from, if it came from the Mokar, if it came from the Tzdadim, and being that it's on Karka Olam, which is not Mekabel Tuma, we're Meiko. By Mei Raglayim, we have an extra Svare to be Meiko. Not only that suffix that we have before, also the suffix where it came from. Also, there might be, we also have, and we see it in Siman Kuf Tzadik Aleph, the idea that when it comes to Mei Raglayim, we have a question, maybe it came as a result of a Makkah. Now, it's not, the Alter Rebbe doesn't discuss over here if we're metame the size of a gris when it comes to Mei Raglayim, if we follow the din of Mei Raglayim, metame like a gris or not, but he compares it to Karka Olam. So, I don't know, but the Tzemach Tzedek clearly tells you can't rely on the size of a gris when it comes to Mei Raglayim, and l'cha'ira, that is the halacha. That is Kuf Tzadik Aleph. I want to point out something very interesting in Siman Kuf Tzadik Beis. Siman Kuf Tzadik Beis you all hopefully learned, and I pointed out you should learn it with the Piskei Dinim of the Talmud of the Tzemach Tzedek. Please run through it, there's interesting things over there. The last two halachas in Kuf Tzadik Beis in the Shulchan Aruch are a discussion, one about Chupas Nida, that a woman was Chupas Nida, and he did a Chupas Nida, she needs a Shoimrim, not she needs Shmirim Mitzad Yichud, because its heart is very strong. And the next point, that a Machzir Grushasai, whether she needs Shiva Nakim, the last two halachas. So, two interesting points that you have in there's one little, in the Piskadinim, if you test, which is page 94 in your books, Ois Yutes. So first of all, when it comes to Machzik Roshasai, he points out what's common sense that you have to understand. If she's Machzik Roshasai, why does she need Shiva Nekiyim? Obviously, we're talking about a woman that's a Muberes, or she was like as Damim or Tahira, whatever it is, because then you have a Shiloh of Dam Chimud. Because if she's not like that, then you have a Shiloh of Dam Nidus anyway. So obviously, we're talking, just a pointer, we're talking about a Machzik Roshasai that she needs she needs to have these Shiva Nekiyim. It is Zayin Nekim because of Dam Chimud. We're Choshesh for Dam Chimud. Even if she's Mesulakas Damim. By Muberes, even if she's Mesulakas Damim, we're the Choshesh Dam Chimud.
It's just like the regular cow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see, he brings them out. Kasher also mentioned, I think, in the Pesach Tshuva, that Yesh Mekilim, he doesn't say what the halacha is. What happens if he did a chuppah before the Shiva Nekiyim were up with Machzik Roshasai, the Kiddush and Achal, and she does not need a shomer? Why doesn't she need a shomer? Because we say he was with her before, he was married to her. So there's not the same Yitzhak Tokfeil that we have. He needed a shomer, he was married to her before. And he was careful hopefully he was careful with Hilchas Nida when he was married to her the first time around. And therefore, she's fine. He doesn't have to, he doesn't need a Shmira. Then he points something very interesting. If they were living together before marriage, and then they get married now, and she's a nida. So Shaila, Suffolk, does she need Shmira or not? He doesn't point out that Tzadeh or Suffolk. Tzadeh and Suffolk are pretty obvious. Mitzad Echad, he was with her before, it doesn't have the same Yitzhak Tokfoi. Mitzad Sheni, Lav Dafka, he has the same Ne'emonos that you say that he's going to be able to hold himself in. V'haraya, he messed up before. So what makes you think that he's going to keep himself in shape now? It's a suffix. He leaves it as a suffix. Which that goes into a whole different discussion. When it comes to somebody who marries the person that he lived with, a bunch of other shilas that come up. What you read in the Ksubah, a bunch of other things. But just when it comes to this topic, this is all that's negea. He puts it as a suffix. Does she need shimur, or does she need shimur or not? That is the point of Sim Kuf Tzadik Beis. Now, that essentially we want to speak about today. Just pointers of interesting nekudas and things that we learned in the past. If we will, Mamshech, hopefully, Mr. Hashem, tomorrow there'll be a share on the next on Kuf Tzadik Gimel.